So, I want you to imagine something for a second. Imagine discovering that the romantic partner you've been, completely devoted to for almost 30 years doesn't actually have a physical body. Like, they never did.
Oh, wow. That's heavy.
Right. You have the shared routines, the intense familiarity, the utter devotion, but the entity you are fiercely loving is just completely invisible to the rest of the world.
I mean, that completely subverts our baseline understanding of what companionship even is.
Exactly.
Because we inherently think of relationships as tangible things, anchored in the physical world. Remove that physical element and you are left with a connection that is purely psychological.
Yeah.
And, well, in the context of the sources we're diving into today, that connection is profoundly unsettling.
It really is. So our mission for this deep dive is to basically explore the architecture of a haunting. We're looking at this deeply fascinating narrative from a Bengali horror show featuring a storyteller named Ananya.
Right, and she brings us 2 first-hand accounts today, right?
Yes, 2 accounts. The main story centers on a 48-year-old woman who has endured this decades-long paranormal ordeal. And then the second is a really disturbing personal anecdote from Ananya herself.
And the goal here isn't just to, share spooky folklore.
No, not at all.
We really want to understand how trauma, cultural taboos, and intense, overwhelming empathy can actually manifest into extreme psychological and physical phenomena.
Yeah, we're looking at the mechanics beneath the fear. Because, when you strip away the cinematic tropes of hauntings, the jump scares and all that, you find a very human core.
You find universal vulnerabilities.
Yeah, exactly. So, let's just get right into the main narrative. It centers on a young college girl named Christy Pandey, and the catalyst for this entire ordeal is almost aggressively mundane.
Like most terrifying things usually are.
Right. So her father runs a local hosiery business. Part of his trade involves buying these massive sacks of scrap fabric from Bangladesh just to repurpose them.
So there's no creepy old mansion.
No Ouija board, no dark rituals in the woods. It's just a bustling household with a family business operating right next door.
Which is honestly a completely unassuming Trojan horse.
Yeah.
I mean, throughout global folklore, you constantly find this trope of the cursed cargo.
Oh, totally.
The idea that a mundane object can carry an unseen, malevolent history across borders. But, the object itself is merely a conduit.
Right, it needs more than just being there.
Exactly. It still requires a specific set of conditions, like a psychological permission slip, to actually connect with a person.
And Christy gives it that slip completely by accident. She's poking around one of these enormous sacks of fabric scraps and pulls out a white t-shirt.
Okay.
And it has these dark, crusty stains on the back.
Which sounds alarming immediately, but...
But she assumes it's just dried tobacco or patan,
Right, the beetle leaf chew.
Yeah, it's super common in the region, and it leaves a heavy, dark red stain. So she literally doesn't think twice about it. In fact, she decides to use the clean sections of the fabric to make miniature clothes for a deity statue she keeps.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she takes the stained shirt and stashes it away in her private room.
The irony there is just staggering.
Isn't it?
She brings a contaminated object into her most intimate space with the explicit intent of using it for a holy purpose.
Yeah.
But the entity attached to that shirt couldn't actually reach her immediately, right? It required a vulnerability.
Right, which brings us to the dreams. So Christy starts having these recurring dreams where a young man is trying desperately to speak to her.
Well, he's trying to warn her.
Well, he's moving his mouth, but no sound comes out. It's like a phone call where the audio keeps dropping.
Okay, that is creepy.
It's only later that the connection finally goes through. She hears him clearly in a dream, and he explains why he was muted before. He actually tells her, I couldn't connect with you because of the Jesus locket you were wearing.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And Christy realizes that earlier that very day, while she was taking a shower, the locket she wore casually just for fashion had snapped.
And fallen near the drain.
Exactly. The barrier was suddenly gone.
Wow.
It's like she lost her spiritual antivirus software,
That is a perfect way to describe it.
That locket was the firewall running quietly in the background, and the second it snapped, the malware was able to download straight into her system.
Yeah.
But I have to ask, how does a simple piece of jewelry hold that much power over our psychological defenses?
Well, so protective charms, whether it's a Christian cross, a Hindu thread, or like a Mediterranean evil eye amulet,
right,
they serve a massive psychological function across human history.
Right.
They are tangible, physical representations of safety. So when a person loses that object, Even if they only wore it as a casual accessory, it triggers a subconscious vulnerability.
Like an alarm going off in the brain.
Exactly. The mind quietly registers, my shield is gone, I am unprotected. That sudden drop in the internal firewall allows suppressed fears, or in Christie's case, an aggressive external influence, to take hold.
The foundational belief in her own safety was just fractured.
Yes. And once that firewall dropped, the virus didn't just passively monitor her system.
No, it started actively rewriting her hard drive.
Yeah.
This is where the haunting physically manifests. And it isn't, a shadow to hallway or rattling chains. It is the overwriting of Christie's identity with these hyper-masculine traits.
Which is so much more invasive.
It's terrifying. The behavioral shifts are jarringly specific. Like, in their Bengali household, meals were typically served mixed together on one plate. Rice, dal, everything integrated.
Very standard.
Right. But suddenly, Christie demands her food be served in separate individual bowls. Dal in one, curry in another, fish in a third. She completely adopts an entirely different cultural eating habit overnight.
And food habits are some of the most deeply ingrained automatic behaviors we possess.
Yeah, you don't even think about them.
Exactly. They are tied to our earliest developmental memories. To suddenly, rigidly change them requires a massive conscious override.
Right.
In the possession model, it implies an entirely different consciousness has literally taken the wheel and is operating the machinery of her body according to its own preferences.
And it's not just food. The physical skills change too. Her mother catches her outside in the dark one night, and Christie is flawlessly juggling a football with her feet.
Juggling a football.
Bouncing it from one foot to the other without dropping it. And this is a college girl who had absolutely zero prior experience with football or any sports of that nature.
See, that is the part that is so hard to explain away. Because muscle memory cannot be faked on a whim.
You can't just decide to be good at soccer.
You can't. You can't intellectually decide to know how to juggle a soccer ball. It requires years of physical practice and neurological mapping in the basal ganglia.
Right.
Demonstrating that skill overnight suggests a total displacement of her physical autonomy.
Well, let me play devil's advocate here for a second. Because sudden personality shifts, new accents, adopting male postures, sudden aggressive tendencies. Couldn't a skeptic just argue this is a severe onset of dissociative identity disorder, or DD?
Oh, absolutely.
Like maybe it was triggered by some unknown trauma rather than a literal ghost. Why do we jump to the supernatural?
It's a very fair challenge. And from a purely clinical perspective, many historical accounts of possession align perfectly with the symptoms of severe dissociative disorders.
Okay.
However, DD typically involves the splintering of a person's existing psyche as a defense mechanism against severe trauma. The alters are usually formed to protect the core identity.
Right, they come from within.
Exactly. What makes cases like Christie's so confounding to observers is the sudden introduction of verifiable exterior knowledge or skills, like the muscle memory required for football.
Skills the host simply never had the opportunity to learn.
Precisely. In the context of the cultural narrative, it's viewed not as a splintering of her own mind, but an invasion by a foreign one.
And an invasion that becomes incredibly hostile. Like her room fills with thick cigarette smoke. Her mother bursts in and Christie is sitting on the bed with a distinctly masculine posture.
Just casually smoking.
She's holding a burning cigarette, speaks in a deep, resonant male voice, and challenges her mother. She literally says, "I smoke cigarettes and beaties, what is it to you?"
Wow.
And then she casually flicks the burning cigarette right at her mother's sari, narrowly missing setting her on fire.
That is.
Instead of jumping at a loud noise in a haunted house, you are watching the complete erasure of a person's personality.
It's the ultimate violation of sovereignty. Because look at the motive of the entity here.
Yeah.
The spirit isn't trying to spook the family for territorial reasons.
No.
He is using Christie as a vessel to experience the masculine life, the mundane physical pleasures, eating his preferred way, playing his sports, smoking his cigarettes, that he was violently robbed of in his own life. Possession acts as an extreme form of identity displacement. The ghost is desperate to live again, and Christie is basically the rental car he's hijacked to do it.
A rental car he will absolutely total if anyone tries to pull him over.
Sadly, yes.
Because the violence escalates to a breaking point. When Christie's parents finally realize the severity of the situation, her mother desperately ties a wholly protective thread around her arm.
Like an emergency measure.
Yeah. And Christie's reaction is visceral. She doesn't just untie it, she uses her teeth to bite deeply into her own arm, tearing at her skin and veins to rip the thread away. She mutilates herself just to remove the holy object.
And that shows the self-preservation instinct of the host body is completely gone.
Totally overridden.
The entity is willing to cause severe, potentially lethal damage to the physical form just to maintain its grip. The pain doesn't matter to the spirit, only the rejection of the holy object matters.
And the physical contortions that follow, I mean, they sound like a violation of physics.
They usually do in these cases.
Christy is witnessed climbing down the exterior brick wall of her father's factory backwards, gripping the wall like a spider. And later, as her family struggles to restrain her, her body bends backward into a severe, unnatural arch.
Oh, that's horrific.
Her bones are audibly popping and snapping under the strain while she just stares dead-eyed at her parents.
Yeah.
Like, if you are listening to this right now and thinking you would know exactly what to do in a haunting, imagine watching the laws of anatomy just break down in front of you.
The defiance of gravity, the extreme hyperflexibility, these are classic signs of deep possession across multiple global frameworks.
Right.
It is as if the physical laws governing human anatomy are being warped by the sheer condensed force of the invading psyche. And the human body cannot sustain that level of skeletal stress for long without catastrophic injury.
Which is why her family has to intervene. They pack her into the back of a truck, still rigid and paralyzed in that horrific back bend, and drive her to an elderly exorcist in a distant village called Banyan. And the ritual he performs is fascinatingly specific. He doesn't chant immediately or throw holy water. He takes one red hibiscus flower and one white hibiscus flower, placing them on either side of Christy.
Just the flowers.
Just the flowers. And the moment he places them, that rigid physical paralysis breaks, and she sits up straight.
Wow.
So why those specific flowers? Why does that break the paralysis?
Well, we are seeing applied tantric traditions here. In these systems, colors carry very specific energetic frequencies.
Okay, how so?
Red represents Shakti active energy, blood, the life force, the dynamic feminine.
Got it.
White represents Shiva, pure consciousness, stillness, the void. By placing these extreme opposites on either side of the afflicted body, the practitioner is essentially creating a localized energetic shock to the nervous system.
Like a spiritual defibrillator.
Exactly. It's meant to forcefully reboot the spiritual circuitry, disrupting the paralyzing grip the entity has on her physical form.
Wow.
But breaking the paralysis is just triage. The root cause still has to be addressed.
Right, which is when the exorcist interrogates the spirit and uncovers the backstory. We finally learn why this entity is so filled with rage and what caused the stains on that white t-shirt.
The moment of truth.
This spirit was a young man who was brutally murdered for loving a girl. Her family found out about the relationship and they chopped him into 25 pieces.
That is, words fail.
It's horrific. Right. That was his blood on the scrap fabric from Bangladesh.
An agonizing premature death fueled by absolute terror, rage, and unfulfilled love. He became an entity composed entirely of raw, unresolved emotional agony.
And this leads to what I think is the most crucial moment in the entire deep dive.
Yeah.
When the spirit originally told Christy this horrific story in her dreams, her reaction wasn't fear. It was deep, profound pity.
Yes.
She told the spirit, if I were in her place, I would have run away with you.
That sentence is the hinge upon which this entire tragedy turns.
The horror wasn't a random supernatural attack. It was an invitation born of empathy. It mirrors toxic relationships in our everyday lives perfectly. Someone sees a broken person, their empathy kicks in, and they think, I can save you. I would have treated you better than they did.
Yep.
And suddenly, that pity becomes a trap they cannot escape from.
In psychological terms, she engaged in catastrophic merging.
Catastrophic merging.
Yes. Empathy is universally celebrated as a virtue, but empathy without boundaries is incredibly dangerous. Catastrophic merging happens when a person's boundaries are so porous that they can no longer separate another person's pain from their own identity.
They just absorb it all.
They absorb the trauma. By saying, I would have run away with you, Christy essentially consented to carry his trauma. In the supernatural framework of this story, that statement was interpreted as a binding contract.
She volunteered her life to be its home.
She didn't just listen to his grief, she became the vessel for it.
And it became a permanent home. Because the epilogue to Christy's story is really tragic. The exorcist in Banyan managed to stop the physical torture and the violent contortions. He saved her body.
Okay, well that's something.
But he told the family he could not banish the ghost.
Because of the contract.
Because Christy had accepted him. He couldn't force out an entity that the host actively desired. Fast forward to today, Christy is 48 years old. She is still single. She lives a relatively normal, quiet life, but she happily claims that she only loves this invisible spirit and wants to spend the rest of her life with him.
That is chilling.
Her family even found that bloody t-shirt neatly folded and hidden in her closet. She kept it the whole time.
It's a profound illustration of Stockholm Syndrome applied to the internal mind.
Right.
Stockholm Syndrome occurs when a captive develops a psychological alliance with their captor as a survival strategy. The survival instinct warps into affection.
Yeah.
In Christie's case, the foreign entities become completely integrated into her sense of self. She can no longer distinguish where her own desires end and the ghost trauma begins.
So Christy invited the entity in through misplaced empathy. But what happens when you don't offer an invitation at all? What happens when you just, happen to walk past a tragedy holding the wrong object?
Right, just wrong place, wrong time.
That brings us to Ananya's personal story, the storyteller herself.
And Ananya's account really explores how an ordinary errand can catastrophically intersect with an unresolved tragedy.
Yeah, so Ananya is out on a Sunday morning running an errand to buy raw meat for her family's catering business.
Okay.
On her walk home, she has to pass the house of a neighbor who had just died by suicide. The man had hung himself.
God, that's awful.
It's terrible. And as she walks by, carrying a bag of raw meat, the scene outside the house is chaotic. Workers are trying to load the body into the hearse, but the hearse doors won't close properly because the deceased man was very tall.
Okay, so the right is stalled.
Exactly. There's all this distressed, frantic energy, and Ananya walks right past the open doors, holding raw flesh.
From a folklore perspective, this is a perfect storm. You have three highly volatile elements converging. First, a sudden, violent death by suicide, which in many traditions is heavily associated with trapped, restless spirits who cannot move on.
Right.
Second, you have the disruption of the funerary rites. The hearse doors won't close, meaning the physical and spiritual transition of the dead is literally stalled.
They're stuck in limbo.
Stuck. And third, the presence of raw meat. In many global cultures, raw blood and meat are believed to carry pure life force, which intensely attracts predatory or hungry spirits.
And Ananya doesn't even realize she's caught the attention of something until the immediate aftermath. Almost as soon as she gets home, she falls severely ill.
With bizarre symptoms, I assume.
Very bizarre. She is freezing cold. Her teeth are violently chattering. Her hands are going completely numb as if she plunged them into ice water. But when her family checks her temperature, she has absolutely no fever. Her internal temperature is completely normal.
Because her physical body is reacting to an unseen, incredibly cold, energetic presence enveloping her, rather than a biological pathogen.
Yeah, and then the blackouts start shortly after. She goes to the bathroom, and the next thing she knows, she wakes up completely unconscious, lying on top of sacks of goods in her family's workroom, with absolutely no memory of movement.
That is so dangerous.
But the psychological terror is worse than the physical symptoms. While sitting in the bathroom earlier, she suddenly catches herself actively wondering, just for a fleeting, terrifying second, what blood tastes like.
And that is the breach.
Yeah.
Just like Christy suddenly wanting separate bowls for her food, Ananya, experiencing an alien craving for blood, indicates an external consciousness pressing its desires against her own mind.
Like it's pushing through her thoughts.
It's the ghost of a traumatized entity filtering its hunger through her physical senses.
And a dream eventually confirms the source. She hears a furious voice complaining to her, saying, "You walked right past with that meat and you didn't even share a piece with me."
It's a literal manifestation of a hungry ghost.
Yeah.
An entity trapped in its earthly attachments, governed entirely by cravings it can no longer physically satisfy.
Thankfully, her mother recognizes the extreme danger and takes immediate action. She brings Ananya to a local mosque, and a woman there performs a very specific exorcism ritual.
Okay, what does she do?
She uses water blessed with rose water, and while reciting prayers, she bends Ananya's fingers severely backward.
Ouch.
Yeah, it's through this specific physical pain and the blessed water that the spirit obsessed with the meat is finally banished. But why the fingers? Why does bending the fingers backward force the entity out?
In many somatic and spiritual healing traditions, the extremities, so the fingers and toes, are viewed as the exit and entry points for energetic meridians in the body.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So by applying intense, localized physical pressure to the fingers, bending them against their natural joint movement, the practitioner is disrupting the physical anchoring of the spirit.
like breaking its grip.
Exactly, it creates a circuit break. Combining that physical disruption with the high vibrational purity of rose water, which is deeply significant in Islamic spiritual cleansing, forces the entity to release its grip on the host's nervous system.
It's fascinating. And if we look at both stories side by side, there is a remarkable blend of faiths used for defense.
Definitely.
Like, Christie's initial defense was a Christian Jesus locket. Her family sought help from Hindu tantrics and traditional village exorcists using hibiscus flowers.
Right.
And then Ananya finds her cure through Islamic water blessings and physical rituals at a mosque.
It reveals a universal pragmatism regarding spiritual technology.
Pragmatism, I like that word for it.
Well, when human beings are faced with the terrifying, inexplicable forces of the unknown, strict theological boundaries completely dissolve.
You just want what works.
Exactly. People will utilize whatever spiritual technology is available to protect themselves. It speaks to a shared human understanding that the unseen world requires robust, varied defenses, and that pain and trauma transcend specific religious labels.
So true. These accounts are profound explorations of how deeply human beings can connect with grief, trauma, and the unseen world around us.
Yeah, they really are.
They highlight the incredible porosity of the human mind. We walk around thinking we are closed systems, safe behind our modern rationalism and our physical bodies.
Oh, we aren't.
No. Under the right conditions, a dropped necklace, an unguarded moment of intense pity, or just walking past a tragedy at the wrong moment, our boundaries are highly permeable.
Empathy is a double-edged sword. Christie's life is a dark, literal metaphor for what happens when we let someone else's trauma completely consume our own identity.
Yeah.
You can acknowledge someone else's agony without volunteering to become the vessel for it.
Exactly. So for everyone listening, think about the tragedies or the highly toxic situations you've felt intense pity for in your own life.
We all have them.
The friends you desperately try to save, the partners you sacrifice your own well-being to fix. By carrying that heavy sympathy, by dropping your own firewall to let their pain inside your boundaries, are you accidentally inviting someone else's ghost to take up permanent residence in your own mind?